Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Monday, December 5th, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then, we will head over to Alan, where he meets with Verola Mihalovic, Senior Director of Product at Flowsum, to talk about Flowsum's Winter Release 2023, which focuses on enabling organizations to secure and accelerate digital transformation by taking control of the full development lifecycle. Alan will then speak to Chuck Heron, CTO at Wib, to talk about the company, the only solution to completely provide visibility across the entire API landscape, from code to production and its recent launch. We then go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con North America, where Alan met with Vijoy Pandey, Vice President of Emerging Technologies and Incubation at Cisco, to discuss how Cisco's newest products ensure security, performance, scalability, and availability. Also at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, Alan spoke with Roy Ravhan, CEO and co-founder of FinOut, to discuss FinOut, a FinOps company that helps companies see the entire breakdown of cloud costs and determine where to better allocate money. Then we go to Qualys Security Conference 2022, where Alan met with Brian Penn, Manager of Security Posture at Aflac, to discuss how he's reducing cyber risk with BCI and VMDR. Also at Qualys Security Conference 2022, Alan spoke with Dilip Bachwani, CTO and Vice President of Cloud Platform at Qualys, to discuss the challenges of container security and lifecycle management. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on and tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. Next up, we're airing episode 3 of our series, Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews Anant Adya, the Executive Vice President for Cloud, Infrastructure, and Security Services at Infosys, as Anant explains what makes cloud security so challenging in the multi-cloud computing era. Then, Mike interviews Jarrett Childs, Global Vice President of Client Services for DoIT, as Jarrett explains why understanding how to measure the return on investment in cloud computing is more critical than ever. And that's what we have coming up for you for this episode of Techstrong TV. But so without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget.
Okay.
How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here?
Check this out.
Optic secret dollar menu.
Order today, and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year. All for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah, $1.
What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1?
Yep, mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep, everything for just $1.
We're gonna order off the Optic secret dollar menu. And
Seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptycs combo of CNAP and XDR, delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for December 5th. First up, Tesla delivered its first electric semi-trucks to PepsiCo last Thursday night. The company delivered 3 trucks to a PepsiCo factory located near Reno, Nevada, with these trucks being part of PepsiCo's zero-emissions freight project to minimize carbon emissions. Tesla's electric semis were originally announced back in 2017, with plans to begin production in 2019. And while these trucks might be 3 years late, it makes it a significant technical advance over the current EV truck. Tesla has said that the semi-trucks will be able to drive up to 500 miles on a single charge, as opposed to Renault's semi-truck that only can drive 125 miles. Next, the Ohio Supreme Court has ruled that streaming services such as Netflix and Hulu are not video service providers and will not have to pay the same fees that cable providers do. Since streaming services deliver content over the internet and not cables and wires in public rights of way, they will not be subjected to the same charges. Zooming out, the issue of whether or not video streaming services are video service providers has become a hot topic in recent years, with several states issuing lawsuits, including Tennessee, Missouri, and California. This being said, these streaming services seem to be getting the upper hand as a majority of the courts have begun to side with the streaming services. In other news, the days of putting your phone into airplane mode might be soon coming to an end, at least for passengers in the EU. The European Union recently ruled that airplanes will be able to provide 5G technology on flights, allowing passengers to make calls and stream video or music. While there could be concerns that 5G could interfere with flights, a member of the UK Flight Safety Committee has said that there is little chance of interference since 5G operates on a different frequency band. The deadline to make the 5G frequency band available for planes is June 30th of next year. Next up, the NFL has announced that it is teaming up with Amazon Web Services for its Contact Detection Challenge, a contest where designers use machine learning and computer vision to better measure and analyze player contact during NFL games. The NFL has said that they would use this data to better anticipate injuries as they occur and help prevent them entirely. The NFL has even stated that the data that they gather here could lead them to change the rules of the entire football games. The challenge will begin today, and the top finishers will be announced in March. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at how the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has issued an advisory calling for extra consumer vigilance when it comes to shopping scams. With the holiday season right around the corner, malicious actors are trying to take advantage of everyone's shopping sprees. This article looks at some of the best practices you can use when shopping online to keep you protected. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. On Container Journal, we have an article looking at how Rafe Systems announced that it would be adding a cost management service to its Kubernetes clusters management platform. Rafe Systems has said that this new feature will eliminate the need to deploy an additional tool for price management, which can save money, especially during our current economic downturn. To learn more, go to containerjournal.com. Finally, on Digital CXO, we have an article looking at how operational excellence will happen when you fix your service experiences. Employees will be more satisfied and productive if they can easily request the services that they need to be successful at their jobs. This article looks at some of the things that you can do to improve these experiences. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
Coding is changing the world, making a difference in the world.
We take anyone, any adult, and help them become the best version of themselves and become a software engineer.
At Techstrong Group, we've undertaken to meet this challenge with our Engineering the Change Scholarship.
My career has completely changed to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Full $10,000 scholarship to one winner to attend the intense software development course at Boca Code.
I was just ready to be a software engineer.
So, Donald is another story.
Right now it's kind of like, I don't know.
Honestly, starting to scare me a little bit.
Roller coaster of understanding something one moment and then feeling lost the next.
If you change the capitalization of a file name, you are going to your whole project.
At the end of it, you're gonna be a really good family.
We call Stephanie like the silent ninja. As much as he's struggling, Donald really, really wants this.
My house burned down twice.
The biggest thing I'm struggling with definitely is time.
That's pretty cool that I've been able to expand my mind to be able to accept different ways of doing something.
My only option is to succeed.
Boca Code, how we do it?
Highs, definitely getting started. Lows would be Diary's jokes.
We told all of them that this is the hardest thing they would have to go through.
All of our graduates are absolute stars.
Boca Code!
Who will graduate and become a software engineer?
This
is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here on Techstrong TV this morning, and our guest is a first-time guest. He's from a company called Flowsome. It's a challenging name for me, I'm not going to lie, but I'll accept the challenge and do my best. His name is Verolub Mihalovic. We're going to call him V on here, but we're going to ask him to say his name correctly. I gave it my best shot, V. Why don't you say it?
Hey, Alan. Absolutely no problem. So it's Verolub Mihalovic, but everyone calls me V.
All right. V, thanks for coming on Techstrong TV. You are the... Well, why not? I'm going to.
So my background is I've come from product, and I've come from product marketing, and I'm a senior director of product marketing here, and work really close with the product team at Flowsome.
Excellent. And for those of the folks in the audience who maybe are not familiar at all with Flowsome, or a little familiar but not really sure, why don't you give us the Flowsome story?
So we are a native solution that's helping low-code applications to do DevOps. So encompassing CI/CD, we encompass the mantra of clicks, not code, and provide the ability for citizen developers to harness the best of what CI/CD can do for low-code applications. We also do a little bit of data backup and recovery, and we are entering the exciting world of security as well with low-code applications.
Well, security is kind of job number one on everyone's mind these days. So, not surprised to see security, take a seat at the table there. Interestingly, though, we haven't, in the past couple of years, seen security be a big issue around low-code, no-code, right? Where they aim at, as you call the citizen developer, and it was more about just, quickly getting apps up and running and, designing your app and getting it done. And that's kind of the way of the world. Now when someone says, wait a second, what about security? And we start kind of building that in as well. You use the term citizen developer, and that's become sort of a loaded term in the low-code, no-code space, right? Because some low-code, no-code providers, they claim, they're very clear, we're not building a product for non-coders, right? This isn't Legos. We're building a product for people who know how to code, for developers, but that will require less coding from them and allow them to more quickly assemble and build, enterprise-level applications. And then there's another fraction of the market that says, that's a great market, but there's a lot of people on business teams, marketing, sales, HR, etc., who quite frankly don't have the time to put something through the whole app dev process, and they want to build something quick and get it up and running. They got to need there's something going on next week and they need something for it, and those are quote unquote citizen developers. I want to make sure when we talk about Flowsome, that's the market, or is it the developers who know how to code using low code, no code?
Great question. So we are built upon Salesforce and moving into more and more platforms. We're built for both. Okay. There are some issues associated specifically with these platforms. When you're taking tools such as Jenkins or Git, you have to work around the legacy solutions. When you're porting over these, solutions from a DevOps perspective, it really requires a lot of technical expertise. What we're aiming to do is simplify the release process, the continuous integration, continuous delivery on these low-code applications for both citizen developers and professional developers by providing tools for both.
Got it. I love it. And that's something new that comes out here. This is built on Salesforce. And of course, Salesforce is a platform/ecosystem that, people are building apps on every day. And quite frankly, another instance where they tend to think, oh, Salesforce will worry about the security. It's Salesforce. It's secure. They secure it, right? And that's a lesson to be learned there as well. So that's great. So V, I guess the big news we're going to talk about today, though, is you guys have is it the winter release for 2023 coming out?
We have our winter 23 release, which has innovative features for all of our products. And I'm really excited to be sharing with the world the news of our Flowsome platform.
Well, share away.
All right, perfect. So we have several themes and what we're really excited for. So our headline product, our DevOps, we're pushing innovation, and some of these features specifically around that we've launched. So we have intelligent DevOps features. They're using intelligence and AI to be able to do something that even Git cannot do. So we have the ability to de-merge branches, and getting into the weeds of this, and merge multiple branches together. Some of the things required by the CI/CD DevOps solutions is inherently very difficult with Salesforce and Salesforce DX. A lot of folks know that there are challenges, very hard to explain what they are. Biggest issue is Salesforce is built both upon legacy code and legacy metadata, and being able to manage that with the DevOps solution when taking something like Git or something else associated that's available, or Jenkins, you really have to do a lot of customizations. What we give the ability to do is to do all these complex things that are required in our other DevOps solutions, such as Git or Jenkins, and do it with a single click. So you listed out a really good example. In a big enterprise, there is a business team and a professional coding team that are all striving to do changes. Now, depending on the complexity and the compliance requirements, when you push a release, Alan, sometimes things get dropped and things don't go to that release. So right now, what folks are having to do is saying, hey, the business does not sign off on these new functions or features in this release. You need to take them out. Right now, what folks are having to do is manually repackage that release, use DevOps principles such as branches, merges, and rebuild that release from scratch on that last hour, which requires 4 or 5 release managers working a Saturday to get ready for that Monday release. Now we can actually do that with a single click of a button, based off the fact that we're built natively on Salesforce and low-code applications, and understand how to be able to take these branches out.
Got it. Love it. So, if you're an existing Flowsome customer, yeah, you get this new release. It's just it's an update in essence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's the best path, though? I'm going to assume most of our audience probably are not Flowsome customers today, right?
Yeah.
What? Give them give them the map. How do they? They may not be Flowsome customers, but they, a good percentage of them use Salesforce.
Mm-hmm. And a good percentage of them probably are very familiar with DevOps, Git, Jenkins, all these fun things.
Yeah. So, what's the on-ramp here for them?
So it's very easy. It's built to be low code and Salesforce specific. So some of these things, what you would be looking for is, do you have a Salesforce development team? If you do, are you using change sets? Are you using some of the pre-existing tools? Salesforce came up with Salesforce DX to try to alleviate some of the issues around getting up to a modern CI/CD DevOps process. And what we do is we built it on Salesforce to be able to deal with all the native things that are required on Salesforce, instead of taking tools like Git, where you have to do customizations and understand in depth some of the legacy data, metadata, and legacy code issues. We take that pain out for Salesforce developers, and with a single click, they can organize branches, organize different release strategies, be able to package stuff together, do automated testing, and have the ability to employ a very modern CI/CD pipeline.
I love it. How is this? I mean, I'm assuming it's not free. How do you charge for this, or how's it kind of packaged like that?
So what we are really easy to manage. It's as if you are running another Salesforce app. You can click online and get the app started. And the way that we package it up is around users. The more users you have, the developers, we have a single user license. So everyone has the capabilities of doing everything within the tool once it's set up.
Per user.
Yep. You can go onto the Salesforce app and find us there. We're one of the highest rated, so we have 5 stars. We are built with Salesforce architecture legacy and having that thought process as well, so we understand it natively. So we really focus on the customer experience and being able to do DevOps properly. So we take our customers very seriously. When you say customer obsessed, I think that's our company mantra.
Excellent. I've seen a few other companies we've interviewed recently who kind of started in Salesforce in that ecosystem and have branched out to others like Atlassian and Jira, or some of these other platforms that people are building apps on top of. Any plans? And you may not know this, right? But just asking, any plans on that?
So that's a great question. So we integrate with all those folks, and something that we're really excited as part of this release is we now we're hosting another platform. I don't know if the majority of the audience has heard this. It's called Viva Vault. And it is the number one player in the healthcare sector, or HLS, as other folks would know it. And we have the ability to do DevOps on Viva Vault, and we are the first to market to be able to do this.
Very cool stuff. Excellent. You know what? We didn't mention the website.
So Flowsome.com, or if you're an existing Salesforce customer, you can go into the App Exchange and you can find out more about us there.
I love it. V, you did great. I appreciate you coming on here and telling us about Winter Release 23, but more importantly about the whole Flowsome story. Check it out, especially if you're on Salesforce, looking to do some low-code, no-code, whether you're a coder or not. There's something there for you. Come back, keep us posted on Flowsome, okay, man?
Thank you very much, Alan.
All right. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey, welcome back to Techstrong TV. We've got another guest, actually a new company that recently came out of stealth.
Indeed.
To talk to you about today. I want to introduce you to Chuck Heron. Chuck is the, I believe, CTO of a company called Wib. He's going to tell us all about it and about his background. Hey, Chuck, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Hey, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's our pleasure to have you on. We love hearing about new companies and what's going on in the market. So, Chuck, before we jump into Wib, though, maybe we should do a bit of the Chuck story. Why don't you give us your background?
Sure. I'll try to keep it relatively brief, but comprehensive at the same time. So, like you, Alan, I've been in the security space for a long time, over 20 years. And so while this company is young, I am not. We are going back to a couple of decades. So I made my start in the cybersecurity space, working with very large banks in the Southeast, and started a penetration testing team. And then sort of the bottom fell out, if you remember, about 20 years ago when Sarbanes-Oxley became the law of the land in 2002. Yep. So I moved from pen testing to defending, went to the blue team. And I was a CISO in financial services companies here in the U.S. and Bermuda, some global firms. for about 18 years, and then left there to become a builder. So I was an attacker for a while, and then I was a defender for a long while. So attacking was more fun, defending is more profitable, and now I'm a builder. So taking that 20 years of battle scars and bringing it into the into the building space, and that's what we're doing at WIB is we're gelling all of our experience around attacking and defending and putting it into what I think is I almost hesitate to call it the next big thing because it's the current big thing, but a lot of folks aren't yet aware of it, which is API security and the attack surface changes that come around digital transformation projects and the proliferation of APIs and microservices that use them. So it's a really fun space and it's a really fun time to build.
Absolutely. Well, look, I will tell you with our audience, API security is no strange term. We've done, I think, 3 virtual events, like half or full day conferences on API security in the last 8 or 9 months. And, even last year at the RSA conference in San Francisco, besides half our team catching COVID there, we put on the DevSecOps event every year at RSA. And part of our agenda there, when we weren't talking software supply chain and SBOM, we were talking API sec as well. So I agree with you. I think this is the brave new frontier. It's kind of what's next in AppSec. It's, WAFs and that generation of technology kind of fades out. And it's quite frankly because, we live in an API economy. Everything today kind of talks to each other and plugs in. It's ubiquitous.
And in the same way that software is eating the world, APIs are eating software. I mean,
no doubt.
It's dramatically increasing.
Well, it's all tied into this, right? So what I did is about 9-10 years ago, Chuck, I discovered what we call today DevOps. And I thought to myself, what a great thing this is for security. Right? That was all that mattered to me. Whoa, this is going to be great for security. But the fact of the matter is as we sit here today, the way we do software has fundamentally changed, right? It's not some bespoke kind of, every app is a bespoke thing that, a team of developers sat and crafted from scratch. Software today is more of an assembly line project, right? Supply chains and stuff like that, and components that work together. And how do they work together, right? They talk to each other, they communicate. As we move to a multi-threaded type of application platform, and Kubernetes and the whole cloud native thing, there's like 2 levels of APIs. There's APIs of apps that talk to other apps via API, or talk is a bad word, but you get the gist.
Right.
Share, and then there's the inter app, right? Parts of an app, different containers, what have you, that actually communicate with each other, and that might be of a bigger world than the outside app to app kind of communication. So yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, to be fair, there are some players, some, I don't know if they're still unicorns in today's macro world, but they raised a ton of money at very high valuations.
Mm-hmm.
What makes WIB different?
So I think that what makes WIB different is we are building on the lessons that the first players to market taught us. And so I'll never speak ill of our competitors. I think we're all working on hard problems to solve. This is a non-trivial problem to solve. Yep. And the common thread between really the first players in the market and WIB is we all are starting from a position of expertise with attacking APIs, right? So the offense is informing the defense. What are the actual vulnerabilities? How are they being exploited? And these things shift over time, quarter over quarter. We continually watch the evolution of vulnerabilities as well as attacks in the wild. And I think that what the first movers in the space did a really good job of was defining the problem, the core problem of rules-based defenses cannot understand or defend against logic-based attacks. And the way that they decided to address that and the lens that they put towards it was one of production traffic, which is a valuable lens, and it's a lens that we at WIB use as well. So seeing what's actually coming across the wire, whether it's at an API gateway or a load balancer, whatever's coming across the wire, requests, responses, it gives you a lot of information that you didn't have before as a defender to understand sort of the threat modeling methodology. So you and I have both been around a long time, familiar with threat modeling. You need to know your assets, actors, interfaces, and actions. Who's doing what to what via what. The challenge with that singular approach, though, is that it's a limited approach. So imagine that you're going out onto the front porch, you hear something go bump in the night, or if you live where I live, you hear coyotes. You go out on the front porch with a flashlight and you can see more than you could see yesterday, which is a good thing. But what we at WIB learned is that singular lens is important, but it's not sufficient. To really understand what's happening from all the way exposing your code via business logic via code all the way to the outside world, you need to augment that traffic visibility with visibility into the code, as well as simulated tests and attacks. There's really very little you can do to assess API security in a static manner in the code. So you need to simulate attacks and really exercise the APIs to understand how the attacks are going to chain across multiple endpoints and so forth and so on. And by putting those three lenses together into our central, what we call our fusion engine, it gives us telemetry and an up-to-date inventory to really give us close to 100% coverage, 360 degrees of coverage into the API ecosystem as you can have. The problem with the singular lens, whether it's just code or just traffic, is it is very rife for false positives and blind spots. And just finding all of the APIs in an ecosystem is a challenge in and of itself. And so that's really the differentiator, where we talked to a lot of the folks that worked and designed and engineered those first solutions, and we asked, if you could do it differently, what would you do? If you could do it over again and do it differently, what would you do differently? And they said we would have a broader lens, a broader approach. And I'd take that to my personal experience as the CISO in financial services and banking and insurance and in fintech. When I built this fintech in Dallas, before we ever opened a single bank account or wrote a single insurance policy, we had hundreds of APIs and thousands of endpoints, and I couldn't see what I was expecting to see. And that's the piece that I think a lot of defenders are missing, is they don't even know necessarily what they can't see. And APIs aren't just about transfer of data. That's obviously a critical piece of it, but it's also about invocation of function. And so one panel I was recently on with the CTO of an analyst firm that I really like, he asked the group, how many APIs does your storage platform expose? How many of those are documented? And how many of those are you monitoring? And if you're in an industry like medical, and ransomware is a key, something that you're worried about, but you're not monitoring the interfaces into your storage platforms, you're probably missing a pretty material part of your attack surface. And that's what we're trying to solve for. And just looking at production traffic only tells you what's active. It doesn't tell you what's exposed. It only tells you what's active, and it only tells you what's active where you know to look. And so by putting more lenses to it, instead of the flashlight, we're trying to bring up the sunlight. That's the overall goal is all I want to see as a defender is everything.
Yeah. No, I get it. Look, I think fundamentally that's been job one with the API security tools.
Absolutely.
Has been, you can't defend what you don't know is there. And the fact of the matter is, most organizations, I don't think, have a real handle on what APIs they got running.
They don't.
Internally and to external sources.
And it's worsening.
Well, as you get more APIs proliferating, it's going to get worse, right?
Yep.
Now, I do agree with you also, Chuck. Look, it's a time-worn story in tech, right? The first generation sort of does the missionary work of defining a problem. And then, the next gen folks learn from those experiences and craft newer, better solutions, right? It's kind of the way of the world.
Early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese.
As they say, you hit it on the head. So WIB just launched, I think it was November 8th, something like that, earlier this month, right? I don't know, was there a funding announced with the launch, or, tell us about kind of the company, if you will.
Yes. So we just closed a funding round led by Koch Disruptive Technologies here in the States, and we are using that to fund product development as well as expansion into the Americas and the EMEA. Most of our current customer base is in the EMEA region. Being with our R&D and research and development teams based in Tel Aviv. And so we're expanding the North American operations, looking to have about 70% of our revenue out of the Americas by 2024, and really keeping our heads down on product development. So there's really two aspects of what WIB is bringing to market. The first is the software platform. But the second is a penetration testing practice. And while my guys are world-class attackers that can do full scope penetration testing, they're really, really good at APIs. And this is an area that a lot of pen testing firms lack. And it's an area that, for example, the new PCI standards, version 4 that were just released this year. Right. So the new pen testing requirements require specifically testing of APIs and gaps in business logic. That's not been API testing for PCI isn't new exactly, but specifically testing for business logic attacks, that's not something that normally happens. And there's no way to automate that with your network vulnerability scanner. And so what we're setting out to do sort of, at the beginning of a relationship with a customer is give them the inventory and the documentation that they need to then do their own API testing, or we can help them with API testing, but essentially automate the boring stuff and fill that foundational gap that they miss with the manual, asking developers to document things. And a lot of times the developers, they don't even know. Well, we find these APIs that they don't know where they came from, or with somebody that maybe it's a company that grew via acquisition. They don't know what they don't know. And so having a discovery engine to go out there and tell them what they actually have, and then generate the documentation for them, and then also tell them the risk associated with it, is really important to triage. What do we need to work on next, right? Rather than spamming your dev teams with hundreds of JIRA tickets without context, we help them to organize. This is a thoughtful and logical approach to getting your API security under control so you can catch up and keep up. And that foundational part at the bottom, the inventory and the documentation, and then a thoughtful testing regime, really is a great place to start.
Absolutely. I get it. Hey, Chuck, we're about out of time. Yeah, WIB website. How do people go get more info?
Very simple. It's one of the last three-letter .coms that's out there, WIB.com. We have case study information. If you want to secure a demo, we're happy to talk with you, figure out the approach that makes sense for your organization. Every API is a snowflake, and every company is doing it differently. And we have a lot of experience not only with sort of the standard sort of software installs and you run it, but as well as managed service and consultative agreements. To your earlier comments, Alan, about DevOps, a lot of times we find ourselves as a bridge internally, talking between security teams and infrastructure teams and development teams to sort of bring teams together. And our platform is designed in such a way that it doesn't force DevOps, but it's available to support DevOps. One lens that multiple stakeholders within an organization can see. So WIB.com would be happy to help however we can.
Fantastic. Hey, Chuck, best of luck with WIB. Keep us posted, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great.
It's WIB.com here.
All right. We're going to take a break on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk, Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am going to wrap up our day one coverage here at KubeCon in Detroit, Cloud Native Con, with a friend of ours. If you've watched Techstrong TV, you might have seen him on before. It's Vijay Pandey. He's with Cisco. Vijay, it's great to see you in person.
Pleasure to be back and in person.
Yeah. Wow. And with Cisco, we haven't had a chance. Vijay, well, we should start with your background, right? You have an interesting, background. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been at Cisco coming up on 4 years now.
Yes.
And I run this group inside of Cisco called Emerging Tech and Incubation.
Mm-hmm.
And think of this group as multiple startups sitting inside Cisco, not just doing tech, but innovating on tech, innovating on go-to-market, the way we approach personas, taking Cisco to new markets, to new buyer and user personas. And so it's exciting to innovate around the entirety of a product development as well as a go-to-market motion, from a crazy idea to putting it in somebody's hands and generating revenue out of it as well. So it's actually been an amazing time. We've been at it for roughly 2 years now, but we're just getting started.
Absolutely. And it really is. It's almost like an internal incubator kind of thing. I've had the pleasure of interviewing you for a couple of years now, mostly remote because of COVID. But before your time with Cisco, you've had a moment or two. I'm going to put you on the spot and embarrass you. I apologize. But share with our audience.
Yeah, so I actually, before Cisco, I spent almost 5 years at Google.
Right.
And I ran their, so I went in to run their entirety of the 2 backbones that they have and all of their data centers. So think about all of the clusters that they build for everything that Google does, from search to YouTube to Google Cloud to everything. So running all of those clusters, all the AI ML stuff, all of the network connectivity, they have 2 global backbones, running all of that. And that was my first and probably my last operational role, because I lost so much hair in that process. But I learned so much because...
Sensitive subject, easy. But go ahead.
And then I spent the remainder of the 3 years building out their zero-touch automation, their analytics, their observability, AI ML pipelines to manage infrastructure. So that's what I spent. And I've been in and out in the distributed system space. I'm a software guy, a distributed system software person.
Right.
And I've been in startups and in large companies, back and forth.
Excellent. Now, so the group is rocking and rolling. We'll be hearing more, I guess, over the next months. Got stuff going on. But there are 2, related to KubeCon here and open source and so forth, 2 announcements that are coming out this week. And we're going to talk about them here. Why don't you get your story?
Yeah, I think the way to think about it is, the thesis is, we all know that digital transformation is taking place, and at the 10,000 foot level, even the 40,000 foot level, it's like everything is software. And this is the Andreessen code, software is eating the world.
It already has.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Software is pervasive, it's solving everything for everybody. Look at our phones, we're using that for everything, right? And if you think about software from a company X versus software from company Y, us as consumers, our perception of that company is very much related to the software that I'm consuming. The features, the uptime, the availability, all of that is my perception of that company. So the people who are writing, the developers who are writing that piece of software are critical to a company's brand at this point.
Sure.
But if you think about it, the assets that are being used to build that piece of software, the software that we all use, let's say for banking, the assets that are being used are actually being developed in-house like by the bank in question. They are being used from a public cloud provider. They might appear in a SaaS provider's environment, and we are just consuming those APIs. They might be APIs on a mobile phone, or they might be open source pieces of code. So you're taking all of these software assets, you're gluing them together to provide an experience for consumers or customers like us. But unfortunately, the security, the scale, the uptime, the performance of that application is your responsibility as a developer or as a company. And so even though they exist everywhere, how do you ensure security, performance, scale, availability of that myriad pieces of software coming together? So for us, we are solving those problems of application, API, container, services, scale, performance, and scalability and security. And the two things that we are announcing actually relate to that. So the first thing that we are announcing is something called NASP. It's very, very geeky, but it stands for Not Another Service Proxy.
Oh, God. Okay.
And so the idea is, we believe that WebAssembly is going to be the de facto runtime for the cloud.
No doubt about it. I happen to agree with you. So I tell you, I have a friend, Liam Randall. He was here earlier. Liam runs the WASM group at the Linux Foundation.
Okay.
He's also the CEO of Cosmonics.
Got it.
I think Docker announced this week.
That's right.
WebAssembly.
So I need to talk to Liam, but I think we believe that just like Java was the virtual machine.
That's exactly what Liam thinks.
For multiple architectures,
WebAssembly will be.
For the multi-cloud environment. And every service that we developers would want to consume needs to be like a Java service that people consume.
But people did that,
in the past. And so NASP is trying to bring a service mesh to a WASM environment.
I love it.
And so as a WASM developer, the service mesh is just another construct that I can use during development time to build out a bunch of services and export it.
So I have to tell you, November 16th, it may be too late, but I hope this is time. We put on virtual events all year round. But every year one we do is called DevOps Experience. And this year it's November 16th. 3 tracks. DevOps of things, DevOps IoT. Because we, like you, software is going everywhere. It's eating the world. But wherever software goes, DevOps goes with it.
That's right.
Right? So it's DevOps of things, DevOps at the edge and beyond.
Okay.
And what we call DevOps everywhere. Distributed DevOps, WebAssembly, WASM. Liam is actually the track chair for that.
All right.
I'm going to tell him I'd love for you to talk about this project.
That'll be awesome.
We could do it live. We could record it. Whatever you want. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I'm counting on you. All
Count
right.
on me on that, because I think we started from the edge.
Yeah.
And if you think about WASM, it was actually built for browsers and the edge and resource-constrained environments. But the more we dig in, we realize, no, it's a general purpose.
It goes everywhere.
Platform. And so that's one thing that we announced, and we believe that's where it'll go. So we're taking a bet on that. And the second thing that we announced was this thing we call function clarity. And the formal announcement team is actually happening on Friday, but we've been talking about it. You can see it in the booth. So we announced API clarity a year ago. We announced Cube clarity at KubeCon Europe.
Valencia.
At Valencia, and we're announcing function clarity here. And that completes the stack when you think about how people develop software and how you want to secure software. So whether you're using APIs from anybody, third party or your own, that's API clarity. Whether using containers and services, primarily your own, and what a software bill of material posture looks like for the assets that you create, starting from the runtime, going back, shifting left. So that's Cube clarity. And then all of the code that you write in serverless environments. And we're starting with Lambdas, and that's function clarity, but we'll move it to GCP functions and Azure functions and all. And it's easy deployment, and it's going to sign it and verify every piece of function code that you write in any environment.
I love this.
You can do it on a key pair basis, or you can use Sigstore, which is another popular.
I love it. That's fantastic, man. And then, you know what? There's a nice continuity to it.
That's right.
Built one to the other to the next. Open source. This will be formally announced Friday.
Yes, there's a press release going out, but
you can check on it then. But you heard it here first.
That's right.
But actually, if you're watching this and you're at the show, you can go to the Cisco booth.
That's right.
Too. Yeah.
You need some. That's right.
Vijay, this is fantastic. It's a pleasure to see you. For people who want to get more information on all of this, as well as what your group is doing, what's a good URL for them?
Yes, I'll give you two.
Good.
So eti.cisco.com is
your group,
where you would go and you would see us in action. And then openclarity.io is where you will find API Clarity, Function Clarity, and Kube Clarity, all of the open source stuff out there.
I love it. All right. Vijay Pandey here on Techstrong TV. That's a wrap on our day one coverage from KubeCon. We'll be back here tomorrow morning with another full day. We have 2 more days of coverage for KubeCon. So stay with us on Techstrong TV, whether you're watching this on LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube or any of our DevOps.com, Container Journal, Security Boulevard, Digital CXO, or Techstrong.tv.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're here, we're back in Detroit. Day 2 of our coverage on the show floor here from KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. Just looking around, it's a little early yet, I don't know. People are just filtering in, coming out of sessions. Our very first guest today is a company new to our audience I want to introduce you to. Say hello to Roy Ravhon. Roy is the CEO of a company called FinOut, F-I-N-O-U-T. And as you can probably tell from the name, FinOut is a FinOps company. The FinOps Foundation is always a big presence here at KubeCon. And Roy, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Yeah, thank you, Alan, for having me.
So Roy, before we get into FinOut, let's hear a little bit about the Roy Ravhon story.
Roy Ravhon story.
Yeah, your journey.
Like many Israeli founders, I started my way in the Israeli military, the intelligence unit. 8200, exactly. So spend there way too many years. And after I left the military, I wanted to do something completely the opposite, right? So I joined a super small startup back then called Logs.io. It's kind of a Datadog Splunk competitor.
All right, know Logs well. Actually, my friend Jonah Cowell.
Yeah, Jonah was here.
CTO there, and yeah.
So I joined Logs.io when 10 people sitting in an all-bridal salon, in the port of Tel Aviv. I've wanted the full experience for Israeli startups after being such a huge unit. So I spent there around 5-6 years, and then I moved to start FinOut.
Excellent. And then, well, let's first find out what's Fin. I said it was FinOps, but FinOut is the name of the company. What made you start this company?
So back in Logs.io, I was the director of engineering responsible for the entire infrastructure. And, cloud costs a lot.
Yes, it does.
And it's just increasing, both in volume, right, and in quantity of the invoices. So AWS and Azure and GCP and Snowflake and Datadog, and the amount of usage-based price software we need to pay is just growing, right? Yep. And management started to ask us great questions that we could not answer, is the AWS growth make sense? Does it match the business? Or how much do we pay for a specific customer? Is this feature profitable? What's the minimum pricing we can get for something? Again, great questions, but unfortunately we could not answer any with the current tooling in the market. So we decided that we need a better product. We need something newer that can actually, adapt to the modern cloud-native solutions. We need to have better support for Kubernetes. We need to have better support for external services, and we need to be able to correlate our business together with the cost. And this is the foundation of FinOut and why we started that.
Excellent. And when did you start the company?
So FinOut was born around a year and a half ago. We raised $18.5 million since, and running as fast as we can, to build the next generation.
It's a startup
solution.
thing.
It's a startup thing, yeah.
Yep. And is this your first KubeCon? You've been KubeCon before?
So our first KubeCon was in Valencia.
Valencia.
Yeah, and it was amazing then. It was amazing here. It's always fun, the KubeCon takes us to cities that I've never been in. So Valencia, Detroit, I don't think I would get
Valencia
it without
was
KubeCon.
a beautiful city. Detroit's beautiful too. A little too cold for me.
A little too cold. Yeah.
But
coming from Tel Aviv,
Yeah, I live in South Florida. It's freezing here. But you're right. Kudos to the Linux Foundation's Cloud Native Computing Foundation. They pick cities where a show like this can really be a big boost.
Yeah, it is.
To the economy. But let's talk a little bit. FinOps has become, FinOps in general, it's become a very hot topic because, like you said, it's cloud sprawl. Whether you're going on Cloud Native or Snowflake or serverless, it just seems to never end. No one's cloud bill ever goes down. It's almost like time. They say you can't go backwards in time; you can only go forwards.
Yeah.
So's cloud bills. you can never go down; they only go up. It seems.
That's the basic paradigm. Yeah.
So what does FinOut do that really helps with that?
So FinOut can help companies implement FinOps, right? So FinOps is a concept that is meant to educate engineers to get them to be more responsible and accountable for what they're doing. So same as we did with DevOps and operations like 5 years ago, now we're doing the same for cloud financial management. And a solution like FinOut can help companies take their entire usage-based spend, put it all into one place, enrich it as much as they can, so break down silos like Kubernetes, like S3 folders, tables, Snowflake queries, things that are not appearing in the regular bills, right? So we can enrich that information to give them just one mega bill that holds everything. Starting from that bill, they can create their own cost allocation rules. They can tie the cost to unit economics. They can correlate the cost to their customers, and they can actively save money, by running optimization across of their entire bills and see how they react to one another.
Excellent. And how do people kind of engage with you on this?
So starting with FinOut is very simple. Something that we took and we take very pride of is that we're very, very easy to integrate. So even to get Kubernetes cost, we're the only vendor that does not require any agent. We can just connect to Datadog or just connect to the existing Prometheus and fetch the metrics that we need from there. So even starting to get Kubernetes level breakdown with FinOut for your cloud cost is a matter of 5 minutes. And we're not extrapolating, right? So we're not checking the instance cost on AWS calculator and just say it's the actual instant price after EDPs, after savings, after spots, after whatever. So companies can really see their entire breakdown of the cost and really allocate it to wherever makes sense.
I love it. Good stuff. All right. So let's say someone says, this sounds great, I want to check it out. Walk us through how do they engage with you?
So just log into finout.io. You can start a free trial. We have a POC period, right? It's very easy to work with us. We have a dedicated FinOps engineers team that can help our customer, achieve better results and to onboard with FinOut to actually save money on their cloud bills.
Is it like just installing an agent? How does it?
No, so it's purely on APIs. We just connect to
pure APIs.
To the cost and usage report from AWS, to BigQuery table in GCP, to Datadog, to wherever using APIs. Nothing need to be installed on-prem.
Right.
It's very easy to start.
I love it. And how's it priced?
So we are priced based in tiers. So each tier grants you access to send us more data, so more dollars that pass through FinOut, and to use more integrations. And the more integrations you use, the more data that is sent to FinOut, the higher the value that you can get, both on savings and visibility. We are the cheapest solution currently in the market. We can beat any pricing that anyone got from any of our competitors.
I love it. Very cool. It's finout.io.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Roy, thank you for being
Alan.
on our show.
Thank you
it's
so
a
much.
pleasure. check it out. You know, if like us, like me, your cloud costs are going up every month, maybe it's time to have a little understanding about what's in there and try to get a hold on it. FinOut.io is a great FinOps solution. We're going to take a break. We're live in Detroit. We'll be right back.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're here. We're live at Las Vegas. We're at the Venetian for the Qualys Security Conference at 22. You know, I personally, I've been going to Qualys security conferences mostly in San Francisco because they used to do them the same time as RSA conference, probably for 12, 15 years, if not more, right? Because I've been in the security world a long time. I want to introduce you to this gentleman right here, though. His name is Brian Penn. Brian is with the folks at Aflac. I'm not going to make him say it like the duck or the goose or whatever, but it's Brian from Aflac. And Brian's a veteran of Qualys security conferences as well. He's actually spoken in a few QSCs. First of all, Brian, welcome, and thanks for coming and joining with us here on Techstrong TV.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I work for Aflac. I've been with them about 7 years. I'm over their security posture program. Been with that about 6 years, and before that I did risk assessments and technology compliance. Yeah, this is my 4th Qualys conference. I made the round this year with Atlanta, Dallas, San Francisco, and now, of course, Vegas. I'll be speaking again today.
Fantastic. You know what, before we get into what you're talking about, let's talk about your role as a security posture, risk person. Well, that's not the average title we hear from people. Let's talk about what you do there.
So, I mean, when people do ask, especially my kids, my family, I say I protect the duck. So, Aflac, if we get breached, hacked, it could be my team, and our name is the brand. So everyone knows the brand, but, my job is to protect the duck. So we manage the vulnerabilities, we manage pen test findings, and we manage misconfigurations.
Excellent. And, you don't have to say the exact Qualys products you use, but those are 3 things that Qualys can really help with.
Yeah, so we actually use almost the whole suite. We use PCI, we use VMDR, we use the WAS, we use the policy compliant. And so my team is more responsible for VMDR, the PCI, but then my counterparts use the application part of it, the WAS.
Sure. And that helps a lot with the when you start getting the pen testing and stuff like that. What about anything cloud-wise, the total cloud, or that's not really good?
We're getting into the cloud now, like most companies are shifting to the cloud. We've got probably, I think over the next few years, we're shifting 500 to 600 applications to the cloud.
Really?
So it's a big push for us to make sure our cloud environment is secure and we mature in the cloud.
Well, the cloud has to mature, then you can mature in the cloud.
True.
But it's getting mature. When you say the cloud, is it more like cloud native kind of things with Kubernetes? And you may not even know this. Kubernetes and containers, or this more traditional hypervisor?
We're doing a lot of stuff. Basically we're shifting our applications from on-prem to the cloud, which is also challenging because on-prem, you're there, and then as we shift up, you've got to have a lot more security control because we're going to AWS, and if you don't have the right controls, they can shut you down.
Yeah.
So it's kind of good for me because I know as we shift up, our teams are going to have to step up and be more secure.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also a good chance. Look, there are some people who do the shift and lift thing, right? And they just take it from their data center and shoot it up to the cloud. I think, I've been talking to people doing these kinds of transformations, migrations for years and years. it's also a good time to kind of take stock of what you got, why you have what you have. And if there's a time where you want to, maybe start changing things from monolith to microservices and stuff like that, well, this represents the opportunity to do all that. Let's talk a little bit about what you're speaking about here.
So what I'm speaking mainly today is our journey from going from our previous tool to where we went with Qualys about 1.5 years and how much we've matured. So when we first went to Qualys, we thought we had a very secure environment. As we started shifting into the tool, we realized, hey, we had a lot more vulnerabilities than we realized. Qualys did a great job of picking up third-party vendors' software. We didn't have knowledge of that. And so even though the risks were there, we didn't have it identified.
Yeah.
So when we first launched, I would say our highs increased significantly. But over time, we've been able to reduce that about 55% due to the tool and the knowledge the tool's been able to provide us.
Are you guys using the automated remediation yet or not yet?
We would love to, but with some of the technologies, and of course you got the business owners, you got the application owners.
You got a highly regulated industry
and being
there
DOI,
too.
you can't break the environment. So one of my goals for 2023 and 2024 is getting that automation and more of a self-service. So, instead of us providing the vulnerability, we just go ahead and remediate it. But you can't break your environment. So that's the challenge we struggle with today.
Well, it's not you alone. Look, I co-founded a security company back in 2001. In 2003, we had a vulnerability management solution we were offering. And we thought, why wouldn't you want to just automate your remediation? Seems like a no-brainer, right? You got a patch it. Well, it don't work like that, especially when you get into financial or government or even healthcare. As simple as it sounds, things aren't always as simple as they sound.
No, and for us, we have DOI, which is Department of Insurance. We have to make sure we meet their needs, and so you have to be really cautious of that.
Sure does. What about like XDR? Has that come up, raised its?
Not quite yet. No, not yet. Not for us in our environment.
Detection and response kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're not. Well, I wouldn't say we're using it with Qualys. We have some of our own stuff we're doing within Splunk with some other tools, but we are kind of with some of the new true risks they're doing with. We are actually right before I left our SOC team and our team. We're actually integrating true risks to do some of that. So it's kind of worked great with when they launched it back in April. We was one of the first companies to demo it. And that's one of the things I'm speaking on again today is true risk and how it's helped us identify some of those critical vulnerabilities that are maybe not so critical, but also the ones that may be medium or low to say, hey, we need to remediate this due to their risk.
Right. So, well, it's about prioritization of those things, right? Wanted to ask you, like clearly you're using Qualys in vulnerability management, not just on your own network, but third parties. You've got this whole financial regulation because you're basically an insurance company. I know sometimes they don't like to say insurance company, but you've got to answer to the insurance departments. What's the new threats that have kind of got your attention?
I mean, I would say almost any of them, because as they change, you've got to be prepared. I mean, last month you had this change vulnerability that came out. We were able to remediate in 7 days, and a lot of it was due to Qualys. I mean, I definitely they had a dashboard come out. We was able to monitor it. We tracked it down. So, I mean, for us, having the right threat feeds, which TrueRisk does for us, having the right tool to get the signatures and be able to identify the vulnerabilities is key. And we've been able to do that over the last year, really successful. And then provide the metrics to leadership to say, hey, we are reducing the risk, but while also keeping the business running.
Love it. You mentioned that another part of your team does a lot of the kind of AppSec stuff.
Correct.
I'm wondering, has anything like around the executive order out of the White House, around software supply chains and software bill of materials, SBOMs, and this kind of stuff kind of factored into what you got to do? Because, I mean, Aflac has, I'm going to guess, hundreds, if not thousands of applications.
Yeah, we have a lot. And that's the thing is you keep maturing. You got to make sure you have the right tools, but you also got to have some of the right documentation procedures to make sure that, because you can have the tools or you can have the documentation, but they kind of go both together. Because, for us, when the regulators come in, they first want to look at our documentation, then they go look at the tools and the data to make sure we are actually doing what we said we'd be doing.
Right.
So that's kind of key for us. And then our WAS team, they use Qualys with that as well. And I think right now we're doing 70 apps in it, and we keep growing that as well.
Good. Brian, one of the frustrating things about security is you do your job when nothing happens, right? If nothing happens, that means you're doing your job. But a lot of times, at the board level, at the C level, they don't understand that, right? They say, hey, we don't hear anything. I don't know how good it is. I know we spent a lot of money on it.
Right.
On the other hand, though, security's really become a number one priority for so many organizations. What about at Aflac? Have you guys, would you say in general, they're increasing security budget, or they understand the job you're doing?
Well, I would take a step back first. Our leadership has been very keen to this for years, even up to the executive board. We provide metrics monthly to them, and I talked to some of my peers. A lot of their executive boards don't even have a really clue, but we monitor our metrics and we send it to them, and they actually are highly engaged. So I think that's the key.
Great.
When your leadership, whether it's just a CISO or a CEO, but when it goes above that to your board, that's important, because that you'll get the funding, or you'll be able to get what you need to be able to reduce the risk, because you can't have buy-in with them and think you're going to be successful. It starts from the very top. And so they really monitor our metrics, and we have to provide those. And they ask questions, not, we just look at it. They come back with questions. And that's really key to me, to have a successful company.
No doubt about it. What about, look, hopefully we're here in person in Vegas this year, right? And we're coming back from this whole COVID, kind of everybody working in their house thing. How's that changed things at Aflac, if any?
For most employees, especially claims, of course, I think we shifted when they made it kind of mandatory go, almost 99% of our employees in our Columbus area went remote. Mm-hmm. So, from a security standpoint, we was actually ready. We handled it well. We didn't see any drop-off. Applications didn't. Good thing with Qualys, they had the agent. So on all the laptops and workstations, we never lost monitoring for it. And I think that was really great for us, because, a lot of companies, as they started shifting home, they lost visibility to their equipment or,
Absolutely.
patching. And, that's where Qualys really helped us, is because we already had the agents on those systems. So as they went home, we were good to go. So we never lost traction.
Good for you. Last question. For people out there who say, look, he's talking at the Qualys event, he obviously likes Qualys or whatever. You've had experience with other solutions out in the market, right? What do you think? You mentioned Qualys found vulnerabilities the other didn't, especially in your third party. But overall, what do you think is, for someone who's considering Qualys, what was the go-to, like the real critical thing that put it over?
So for us, it's actually not a technical. First was, we have Japan, which is, a lot of people don't realize Japan is one of our largest revenue part of our company. And so big market, and we're almost in every household there. So for us, with our Japan counterparts, the number one actually on our POC was language. A lot of the other tools don't have that support in Japan. Right. They don't have TAMs or even support staff. So that was actually our number one driving force, more than the tool. But then as we got into Qualys and our PSC, we had our checks, just like every other company should do, your checks. We had 3 or 4 vendors, but the language really hit home. And then one of the other issues we had with some of the other vendors is finding the remediation and when it was remediated, because with our SOC 2 audits, some of the other ones, PCI, you have to show when it was remediated. Within a tool, you can do that, where a lot of the other tools, you had to add it into some kind of a system. So for us, those are 2 keys that kind of closed the gap for us as a company.
Excellent. That's always been true in Japan, man. If you want to be successful in Japan, you need to be native.
Right, and that's really, and it helps us, because as we partner with them, we'd had to get on calls with a translator, and that 10-minute conversation takes 2 hours, hours.
No, I've been there.
And so, you understand that. And so for us, having that someone there, it's reduced a lot of our time and our money, and, from having to be on calls and translators. So it's been great.
Good for you, man. Hey, I know you got to go speak here. I want to let you out to get on the stage. But first of all, thanks for coming on Techstrong TV with us today. Best of luck, and thanks for all the work you're doing, man.
All right, appreciate it.
All right. Brian Penn, Aflac here.
Aflac.
At QS. I didn't make him do that, I promise. At QSC 2022, we are live at the, where the heck are we? We're at the Venetian. And we'll be back in a minute with our next guest.
This is Techstrong TV.
All right, we're back here in Las Vegas for Qualys QSC 2022. I don't know if you watch, you probably wouldn't remember, but if you watched last year's Qualys QSC, we had this gentleman on. I think you had just recently got into the role. Was it last year?
I was picking up engineering operations.
Yeah. So it's Dilip Bachwani.
Bachwani.
And actually, you can tell them your role now.
Okay. I'm Dilip Bachwani. I'm heading engineering operations and support at Qualys. I've been at Qualys for over 6 years now.
Yes.
Came to Qualys to initially build its data platforms as we were transitioning as a company from the 4, 5, 6 products we had to the 20 plus products that we have today. It's a different mindset in how you do things.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the amount of products. Yeah. If I remember correctly, it was really sort of a DevOps transformation. Correct. Where the way these products were developed,
yes,
and maintained was moving more to a modern infrastructure, microservices, DevOps, less of that waterfall release every twice a year or what have you. And so, let's start there first. How's that transformation been going?
It's coming along really well. We've made a lot of progress. We've largely moved from our monolithic systems to microservices. We have over 300 microservices today.
Whoa.
We have about 100 platforms running at very large scale. I think last time I was here, I'd shared some numbers, but today, I believe we shared it in our keynote too. But our Elasticsearch clusters have about 13 trillion data points.
Oh my God. That's hyperscale.
That is hyperscale.
Right.
And this is all in-house. We've built our own skill set to run these platforms. But really, it's not the platform so much. Ultimately, it's the value that you build on top of the platforms, right? It's the products and capabilities that we are building that are enabling our customers in their journeys.
Well, so I take it the platforms enable you, right? Because you could think about building scalable applications that service thousands, tens of thousands of customers. But if you don't have a platform to support them, it's useless, right? It's shoveling sand against the tide. So it's important, I think, that to have that base. But that now becomes the enabler for all of these great products, and it kind of boggles my mind because I know Qualys for 23 years, whatever it's been, 24 years. And, they had a vulnerability scanner. And now there are how many different products? It's 20-something?
If you look at individual products, it's over 20. But what we've also done is we've said, how do we combine some of these products and enable customers on their journeys? So as an example, when you take vulnerability management, you said Qualys had a scanner. Yes, we did vulnerability management. We had a scanner. We had agents, right?
Yes.
We have about 80 million agents out there now. But it's not just about running the scan. It's also about visibility to assets, right? So what we've done now is, as an example with Qualys VMDR, you get full asset visibility across your active, managed, unmanaged assets in your data center, public cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, anything, container assets. Get that visibility. Then you run the scan. Then after you run the scan, what do you prioritize on? What's important from a risk standpoint for your organization? That's the true risk that we talk about now.
Right.
And then we've integrated patching into the workflows. So you can have automated zero-touch patching, right? So when you look at everything I just mentioned, you can look at those as, there are 4 or 5 different modules, or you can look at it as VMDR, right, which is the vulnerability management. How do you run the whole program? And that's what is coming together now. What we announced today with Total Cloud as an example is another example of that. Mm-hmm. To say, how do we enable customers as they're on their cloud journeys? So instead of getting caught up in the buzzwords of CNAP and CIEM and this and that, what do they really want, right? And what they want is, as they are moving from the data center to the cloud, as they're moving to container workloads, how are we moving with them on that journey, but how are we making it easy for them? Because the problem domain still stays. You still need good hygiene.
Yeah.
You still need compliance. You still need the right kind of configuration. Areas that we are very good at, very strong at, right? And that's what we are enabling now, right? We have the products, but we are packaging them also in a manner where customers can say, well, I think this gives me a complete holistic picture, a single unified view, and to your earlier point, built on a single platform, right? We have a truly unified platform. I tell this to everybody, right? It's the underlying infrastructure and the data is the same, and that is enabling.
So that's the beauty of a platform too.
Correct.
You know, there's an argument to be made of the 20-something products that Qualys has, and it's not just Qualys, of any of these products themselves can be very much become features. It's just a feature. And what's today's product is tomorrow's feature. It gets subsumed within a bigger platform. And it's truly the platform. Because once you have that platform, you can keep adding features, whether you want to call them a separate product, how you package it, sell it. It's more features we're adding on top of the platform. So that, again, the enablement of it. Qualys is a great example of it now.
I came here to build it. I can tell you Qualys is a phenomenal example of it.
That, absolutely.
Single platform that can give you that breadth of coverage, that breadth of capabilities.
At scale.
Right? At big scale.
And that, that's something I think that separates Qualys from any of the others. We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to just quickly touch on Total Cloud. We had Prashad here earlier, just right before you. And it's his baby. You could tell his pride and passion in it. But from your point of view, what do you see with it?
See, I mean, it ties back to a little bit on what I was saying earlier. Organizations, as they're moving from the data center to the cloud, right? So when you move to the cloud, you want to do workload protection. You want to do infrastructure and entitlement, right? You want to look at your posture. And what has happened is for each of these things, now there are different terms and there are different products and different vendors trying to sell each one of these, right? And it's making, at least in my view, I think Parag shared the same sentiment, it's making everything more noisy. Right? And what we are trying to do with Total Cloud is we are saying, well, let's keep the buzzwords aside. What problem do we really want to solve? Right? We want to make it easier for our customers as they are moving to the cloud to understand what their posture is. What do they need to do from a hygiene standpoint to take care of that posture so they are safer in their environment, right? And that's where we launched Total Cloud. And a big piece of that is FlexScan. Where we are saying you can scan in different ways. So as soon as an asset comes up, you can do an API-based scan, which is quick. Right? But for that same asset, you can also deploy an agent and you can get a more comprehensive continuous scan that is happening. For that same asset, we can also do a network-based scan because there are some vulnerabilities and checks that you can only do outside
from that third party,
as an example, right? You can also do a snapshot-based scan where you just take a snapshot and then you do the evaluation after. And what we will do is we will do all these scans, we will process the data on our platform, and then we'll give you this comprehensive view of what your security posture is.
Across the whole thing.
Across the whole thing, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's what people want. First of all, they don't want one solution for on-prem, another solution for cloud, another solution for cloud native, another solution for SaaS or endpoint. They want a platform, that's one platform.
Absolutely.
For security.
And I can tell you that because while I'm responsible for engineering at Qualys, I'm responsible for all global cloud operations. So I'm a user of what we do.
You're eating your own dog food.
We have FedRAMP authorization. We have our platforms that run in the data center on bare metal, on virtualized infra, in public clouds, in all public clouds. So when I look at my own security posture, for me, whether I'm running in the data center, whether I'm running on containers, whether I'm running on the cloud, I don't particularly care. I still want to know what my vulnerability posture is across my footprint.
Agreed.
What my compliance posture is across my footprint. And what should I prioritize and focus on across my footprint? Because ultimately it's the weakest link that you should focus on, or the risk for your environment that you should focus on, right? And that's where the unified platform, the unified view, obviously is making a difference.
Excellent. Dilip, we have to bring our next guest on.
Okay.
Pleasure seeing you again.
Thank you so much.
Amazing,
Always
good,
good to be
great
here.
stuff.
Yeah.
We'll continue this conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. We're here in Las Vegas. We have one more interview for today, so stay tuned. It's coming up in just one moment.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey everyone, happy Monday. Cody J. Brown here with some programs happening this week at Techstrong Learning. So starting off tomorrow, Tuesday, December 6th at 11 a.m. Eastern, join us for securely delegating access to your AWS resources. Our speakers from Teleport and AWS will be discussing granular access controls for your AWS resources and review a tool called Teleport Access Plane and how to use it in conjunction with AWS Identity and Access Management. Following at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, discover cloud-native protection and portability at scale with Trilio. Distributed environments have become a norm, but when information is not seamlessly flowing from the cloud to on-prem or the edge, disaster recovery can become a disaster itself. Trilio's continuous restore aims for seamless migration, replication, and restoration across your entire environment. And moving to our workshop on Tuesday, December 7th, join us at 1 p.m. Eastern for enterprise-grade Tetrate Istio distribution on Amazon EKS. Now, this 90-minute hands-on walkthrough will show you just how to deploy EKS clusters with the Istio Service Mesh extension, how to deploy an application on that cluster, and dive deeper into configuration settings and application testing. There are a couple of recommended steps to take prior to this workshop, so please do check out the registration page for those prerequisites. It should be a pretty good program. So that is all I've got for you right now, but as always, we do have plenty of upcoming programs this week at Techstrong Learning, and we, as always, have plenty of on-demand programs for you in our catalog, so feel free to check those out at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
The Engineering the Change Scholarship Program offers a life-changing opportunity for a winner from an underrepresented community to change their lives by becoming a full-stack software developer.
The background that you might see that it's a weakness, it's a strength in this field because everyone is constantly looking for people that are going to bring new ideas.
It's an intense 12-week course that is not for the timid.
for real, who's mastering this right now? Because I sure am not.
So you guys are badass. Like as a class, you guys are crushing it.
You've got to be dedicated. You've got to be ready to do it. Your life has to be ready for it. Follow us as we go through this cohort's Engineering the Change winner on their journey to becoming full stack engineers.
Say with great power comes great responsibility.
We got to take it down to 3 finalists. Toria, I'm going to ask you, who really kind of stood out for you?
The 3 people that stood out to me the most was Stephanie and another woman named Carly and a man named Donald.
Mitchell, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think those are 3 great candidates, and I mean, you know very well, right, what it takes to go through this process.
Look, I still love good written and oral skills. I like people who can speak well. I like people who really can write well.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you something. To your point about Stephanie, is it Stephanie Sanchez? Yeah, Stephanie Sanchez. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
Okay. And bring her into
the golden buzzer.
So,
she's in.
The 2 other people you mentioned, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this.
Yeah.
She said something like, her brothers could do it, why couldn't she? Mm-hmm. Right? Wasn't that in the essay?
Yeah, that's something that stuck with me, especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Because I think that for her, she was like, if they can do it and there's not enough women in tech, like she was like, I can do it too. And I love that.
I say send Carly to Hollywood.
Golden buzzer?
Yeah. Donald Bazell, really nice guy. What I liked about his essay is his genuineness. Is that a word?
Yeah, like being genuine.
He's genuine.
Yeah.
Right? You got it from him. My only caveat on this is he really doesn't have any tech experience.
Yeah.
So if it's your vote and Mitchell, you don't object, I say let's give Donald the last ticket to Hollywood. And those are our 3 finalists for Engineering the Change. Let's bring them in for interviews and pick our winner.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Sounds
All
good.
right. We'll see you on the next show.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey
guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Anant Adya, who's Executive Vice President at Infosys for Cloud, Infrastructure, and for the purposes of this conversation, security. Anant, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Every time anybody talks about cloud, the first thing that comes up is security. Everybody seems to be worried about cloud security. And yet, arguably, the cloud security is better than it is in an on-premises environment. So walk us through what from your perspective, are the challenges that customers are really seeing when it comes to cloud security?
Sure. So, first of all, thank you, Michael, for inviting me for this interview. And essentially, cloud is as such a very complex subject. And when it comes to security, it becomes more complex. So one of the big things that we have been seeing customers face as a challenge is most of the customers think about security as an afterthought, right? When it comes to cloud, by the way. So 9 out of the 10 customers where we have done transformation programs have actually put cloud as the first objective and security as something that, that follows cloud. So essentially, I'll give you a couple of examples, right? So there are a lot of customers of ours, and most of the customers of ours do not use just one cloud, but they use multiple clouds. And one of the big sort of, myth around cloud security is once I move my workloads to cloud, I am secure, right? Because cloud itself, the hyperscalers themselves are very secure. What customers don't realize is the limitations in terms of what the cloud providers provide you from a security standpoint versus what you actually need. There is a big gap there, right? So one of the myths that we have been trying to break with our clients is just by putting your workloads on cloud or just by working in the cloud doesn't mean that you are secure, right? So here are all the gaps that you need to understand, and here are all the gaps that you need to fill. So that's number one. Number two, we have a concept in Infosys called secure by design, right? So we want to make sure that security is embedded in the design when we are executing any project for that matter, right? Not just cloud project, but any project. So when it comes to cloud, we want to make sure that when we design the cloud solution, which includes either just lifting and shifting the workload or creating a cloud native application or looking at cloud for some PaaS or SaaS components, we make sure that we highlight all the security things that customers need to embed in the design so that as they move to cloud, they are secure by design and not secure as an afterthought, right? I mean, in the sense they don't start scrambling after they are moved to cloud. So these are two things that we are doing. One is making sure that we identify and highlight the gaps that clients will have once they move to cloud with respect to security. And second is to make sure that we design security very proactively, right? I mean, it's not an afterthought, but it is in the design. So these are two things that we do. And that has actually helped customers to sort of, mitigate the risk associated with not having any security in the cloud.
Do you think that this whole notion of shared responsibility kind of results in customers thinking that the cloud platform folks are doing more to secure the platforms than they are? Because it seems like they'll secure their infrastructure, but anything that is defined as access or the application itself is your responsibility. But it's not clear to me that everybody understands that.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, what we have done, right, by hyperscalers, we have actually highlighted to our customers. We actually have created something called a service catalog, which says by default, when you actually go to cloud, here is what is included in your pricing, right? In the sense, for example, if you migrate a workload from point A to point B, here are the 5 things that the hyperscaler will provide you. And here are all the things that they expect you to basically either sort of, buy from them or bring on your own, right? So one of the things that is usually not clear to a lot of customers is For example, when we look at security in general, right, there are three broad parameters. One is who has access to your workloads, which is the first important thing that everybody has to understand. Number two, how is your workload protected with respect to different aspects of security that we can bring in the workload itself or in the instance itself. And number three, which is the most important thing, how is the data within the workload protected, which is the encryption tools or the encryption software that we can bring. And this gets a little more complicated as we start using cloud for regulated industries. For example, if you are working with the healthcare customers, we have a healthcare customer which actually deals with Medicare and Medicaid customers. And they are extremely worried about patient data, right? In the sense, how do we protect patient data in the cloud? And essentially, we have brought in tools like Warmetric, and we have brought some native encryption tools on Azure, which we have implemented to make sure that the patient data is protected. Similarly, when you go to a customer in the life sciences space, their requirements are very different. And also, of course, financial services and insurance. So what we have done is we have made sure that there is the basic access level security that is put in place, which is who accesses the workloads, what are the firewall controls, what are the controls on the instance. Then we go up the value chain and make sure all the way up to the industry requirements, the compliance requirements, the regulatory requirements, they are protected. So that's how we look at defense in depth, as we call it, by implementing all these tools, and that's how we have been protecting our customers.
One of the issues that we think we hear a lot about is that it's just too easy to put a workload on the cloud because the developer does it directly themselves and they use infrastructure as code tools. And before you know it, there's a misconfiguration. And it seems like back in the old days, there was a security team that checked on stuff before it was deployed on premise in a production environment. So have we kind of gotten a little too loose in our processes for deploying workloads, and that's part of our issues?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that is, and honestly speaking, Michael, there have been several scenarios like this where there is no central governance when it comes to how cloud is being leveraged, right? And essentially, there is a very easy thing for some of these developers to just go and create an instance in the cloud, and they start using some of the data. They play with the data in the cloud, and then suddenly somebody from GitHub will access that instance, and there is proprietary and confidential data that they have access to. So what we have been trying to do essentially to sort of mitigate this risk is when we actually have these provisioning tools that are made available to our developers, we have multiple checks that we have put in place before actually the instance gets deployed in the cloud. And what we have essentially done is we have created three broad reference architectures where we have a reference architecture for Azure, for Google, and for AWS. Which actually clearly defines what is something that we need to put in place before the workload actually gets deployed in the cloud. There is one big thing that the developer has to sign off before he or she starts uploading data and populating data in this particular instance is to give a very clear confirmation that here are all the security checks and process that has been put in place. And here is what is the data that is going to get uploaded. And here is the required level of permissions and required level of approvals that we have got to upload this data. Because a lot of times what we have seen happening, Michael, is there is always this finger pointing, right? That, okay, we had created the instance, we uploaded data, as per the process, developers do not need to take any approval and all of that, right? So I think there is a lot of this finger pointing happens. So there is a lot of process gaps also that we need to fix, right? So we have put these process things in place, which actually make sure that, the developers are, while they are free and they have a good amount of I would say authority to create these instances and leverage the power of cloud. But when it comes to data, when it comes to confidentiality, when it comes to regulatory compliance, we have put process in place, which actually make sure that, they actually take the approvals at every step of the way. So I think that's essentially how we have done it.
we hear a lot about shifting responsibility for security further left, and just how practical is that? I mean, ultimately, most of the developers I know, security was an elective for training. They never took it. So, can we teach them security, or do we need to figure out some way to put more automated guardrails in place?
No, I think, basic security awareness is very, very critical, right? I think essentially, if you look at the cloud security framework itself, right, the architecture, it goes from the bottommost layer, which is network security, all the way up to the governance, then, of course, identity access, monitoring, logging, all those aspects. But the most important thing in all these steps, or the entire security stack, as we call, is the piece which is related to data security, right? I think all the aspects related to network, how do we basically make sure we actually handle endpoint security, how do we handle identity access, these are things that the developers do not have to worry about, because that is something that is embedded as we create the instances, as we deploy the instances in the cloud. So they don't have to worry about that, because it is completely automated. But when it comes to data security, and when it comes to code security, right, I think how do they make sure the code is secure? These are two places where the developers, the application teams play a big role. So they know that when they are dealing with some of these aspects, as they develop an application, or as they manage the application, or as they test the application, they will test these things as well. At the same time, one more important thing that we have done, Michael, is that there are templates and there are checklists that some of them are automated in nature. Some of them, for example, code review, right? I mean, there are multiple tools today that are available for example, we work very closely with Palo Alto. And Palo Alto Prisma Cloud has a solution for how do we basically secure the code that is in the cloud. So we bring some of these aspects as well, where we actually do three things, right? One is we secure the workload that is running on the cloud. Second is, as the application developers and application testing teams are actually testing the code, how do we basically make sure the code is secure, and we do a review of the code itself, which sometimes is automated, sometimes it is manual. And the last but not the least is, how do we encrypt and how do we protect the data that is in the cloud? So I think we have to educate our application teams on this. See, the rest of the things like network security, firewall security, access, these things can be taken care in the design itself. But these are important steps that application teams. So I think shifting left is something that it works both ways, right? I think, but having knowledge of this is very important. I think that's essentially what we have been doing.
Is cloud security going to get harder? Because every time I turn around, people are moving from monolithic applications to cloud native. You see things like Kubernetes and serverless computing frameworks and containers, and all these things appear to be a lot more dynamic. So will things get maybe more difficult before they get better?
Yeah, so I think, in fact, I would say, compared to the cloud native development that used to happen, I mean, when I say development that used to happen on-prem, I think cloud native development is far, far more, I would say, methodical in nature, right? Because the amount of controls and the amount of automation, the amount of standardization that we can bring when it comes to cloud native development is far more compared to how it used to happen when we were doing the standard application development, right? Using the legacy tools, as we call. But at the same time, thanks to all these cloud native security companies, there is a lot of focus when it comes to native security or cloud native security that they have brought in place. And whether it is companies like Palo Alto, or whether it is working with companies like Zscaler and all these companies, they have a lot of these solution options that are available today to secure a cloud native workloads, whether it is Kubernetes or OpenShift or Anthos or any of those things, right? Because what essentially happens is, for example, with one of our financial services customer, in 2019, they decided that all their cloud work that they will do will be cloud native. They are not going to do any lift and shift. They're not going to basically take a workload and move it from point A to point B. but they are going to transform the workload in the cloud using AWS Kubernetes and basically deploy it and use it, right? So essentially for such customers, defining cloud security for their cloud native development is far more easy because there are templates, there are reference architectures, there are certain guidelines that the Kubernetes and AWS Kubernetes actually brings from a security standpoint. So I would say essentially this is far more easier compared to the way it used to happen in the past. So I would say, but not many customers are going the Kubernetes and OpenShift and Anthos way. But as more and more customers going that way, I would say security will be much more contained compared to how it is today on-prem.
Yeah. So what's your best advice to folks, or what's that one thing you continue to see that makes you shake your head when it comes to cloud security? And what would you wish that people would know or do better than they are doing today?
So one is, of course, I always recommend this to customers that, please do not think about security after you have decided what you want to do with cloud. Majority of our customers, right, and fortunately it is changing now post-COVID, started thinking about security after they started using cloud. So they moved their workloads to cloud, they started doing cloud native development, and then there was this BitSight report that we ran, or we did a red team exercise. And then we identified so many issues, so many vulnerabilities, and the customers started thinking, oh my God, I thought cloud is secure, but look at all these things that I'm now discovering. So they started then implementing the mitigated solutions or mitigation on the issues that were raised, right? So one thing that we are doing is think about cloud proactively and not as an afterthought, right? So that's one thing which we are doing. Second is we are working very closely with all the three hyperscalers to bring more and more capabilities to highlight what are the gaps that the customers would have as they move into the cloud. So we have published reference architectures with AWS, with Azure, with Google as to what is the basic security that you will get, what are some of the additional security things that you need to buy or you need to build as you go into the cloud, right? So educating the customers on what are those gaps is a very important thing. And last but not the least, don't just stop at what you implemented when you move to cloud, right? Continuously keep reviewing your cloud security, do red team exercise, bring in some of these third-party providers who can do the assessment of your code, assessment of your containers, assessment of your workloads, and keep identifying the vulnerabilities that you have in cloud, right? Because you just cannot do an implementation of security one time and then forget about it, right? I mean, you have to keep evaluating, you have to keep auditing, you have to keep reviewing the security in the cloud. So that's the third thing that we are doing. So basically, think about security before you move to cloud, embed security in the design, identify the gaps that you have once you move to the cloud, and third is basically keep reviewing and keep auditing your workloads. That way you'll be actually much safer. So that's essentially what we are seeing and what we are recommending to our customers.
All right, folks. Cloud security first, second, and always. Hey, Anant, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Jared Childs, who's Senior Vice President for Client Services for Do It. How do we say that? Jared?
Do it. Good question. Common question. Yeah.
All right. One way or the other, as long as you call you, it's all good, right? So the first question, though, is what is going on with the cloud these days? We've been at it now for, let's say, more than a decade. And you would think that we'd have a better handle on it than we do, but the return on investment seems a little bit cloudy. People aren't quite sure if it's more expensive or less expensive. And I'm sure that the answer to that is the infamous depends. But from your perspective, what are you hearing from customers these days about their cloud migrations and then the actual running of the workloads in the cloud after they get there?
Absolutely. Good question, Mike. We've definitely seen a lot of trends over the last decade and so or more since the cloud's been coming along. A lot of push to go to it immediately, new shiny, try everything, cloud first. Saw a lot of reverse migrations, people realizing that they did it wrong. They went too fast. They didn't have a proper strategy. I think we've come around quite a bit, but there's still a lot of opportunity to grow. There's a lot of companies that are in different life cycles in their cloud adoption and how cloud native they are. But I would say by and large, what we've seen is a lot of improvements in cloud costs of taking an architecture, putting it in the cloud, making sure you're using your resources properly. I say that broadly. Not everybody's doing that well. But there's still a lot more in terms of like being able to truly have a cloud native application, to really have more scalable or cost-effective architectures and things like that, which is harder. It's one thing just to make sure that you've got the right application refactored in the cloud. It's another thing to potentially have to rewrite your application for the cloud. So you're seeing varying degrees of that and different kind of cost optimization strategies that tie into there right now.
It feels like we're coming off the quote unquote drunken sailor era of the cloud, where we let developers just basically spin up and consume resources as they saw fit in the name of agility. So is there more adult supervision being brought to bear?
Yeah, I think there certainly should be. There's kind of a couple different ways that you think about it. A lot of times, one of the big promises of the cloud is that agility, getting there quickly, being able to try something, not having to go procure all the infrastructure, everything first. And that's very valid. But what you see happen a lot is you go from that straight on to I have something successful and you prove the concept, but you didn't really build all the optimization and everything in up front. Maybe you shouldn't have. I mean, maybe it doesn't make sense to spend all that time up front. You want to prove a business case or prove a service or something is going to work well for your business or your customers before you go invest that. But I think that lag time, people wait till they go, oh, look at my cost, before they go back and start to go reevaluate if they really optimized for cost. So that's a big part of it.
As we kind of look at everything, are we also seeing more finance people get involved in this conversation? We hear a lot more about the term FinOps, and sometimes I scratch my head because we had capacity planning back in the day. So what's different about this in the cloud era, and what exactly do we mean by FinOps?
Yeah, that's good. I was actually going to say FinOps right as it came out of your mouth. So that's spot on. You know, there's a lot of tools. Kind of the first wave of thinking about monitoring was, is my application resilient? Do I have the fault tolerance? Do I know when something goes bump? Can it auto heal? It was all great. That went to help prove that you could actually build more resilient applications in the cloud. But the next piece was understanding the cost controls. And this is where you see FinOps stacks and teams that really not only understand the architectures and the resilience, but understand the different levers and the different things that are driving the cost. So these tools, and this is kind of like the evolution of what we used to call CMP or cloud management platforms, are more heavily tuning towards how do we enable the finance teams or cloud experts that have that responsibility to understand what's going on in the cloud. And that's a couple different things. It's not just resource utilization. This is something that might be different to your point around understanding capacity planning and things like that. It could be, what are the workloads that are most effective for a cost savings plan that might be provided by a cloud provider? Reserved instances, spot instances, savings plans. That's complex, and it's more than just understanding the utilization of your resources. It's understanding the patterns that your applications may have, that your customer bases may need, and how you can tune additional financial levers with those types of things as well.
Is that always going to be a manual task, or can we start using the machines themselves to monitor the machines so that we can optimize the workload based on reserve and spot instances or whatever's available at the moment?
It's getting there. In fact, not to do its horn too hard, we have a tool called FlexSave, which does just that. It helps automate identifying opportunities for savings plans. And of course, there are tools out there that help do right sizing automatically and things like that. But again, back to architectures, that's a big part of it. Not every application can just have something out there willy-nilly changing resource sizes and things like that. So you have to be designed in a way that enables these types of tools to work in a lot of cases. And then some of the newer tools that we're seeing, like FlexSave in the market, complement to then go help identify automation and ways to find saving solutions beyond just utilization efficiencies.
We hear about multi-cloud computing all the time. And is that just kind of an example of sprawl, or are people actually like comparing cloud platforms and deciding, which workload goes where based on cost in a traditional kind of sense? Or is it just, some people like one cloud versus another, or some workload might run maybe 2% faster on this cloud than another.
Oh boy, Mike, do we have about an hour to go into this one? I've been several multi-cloud companies and pure play cloud companies have been tracking this since the beginning. Almost a religious debate. I think that the original thought of multi-cloud it's changed a lot. Just that like, oh, you can put your application, move it anywhere, cost op, performance op, whatever it might be. What we're really seeing these days is most companies actually using multiple clouds, but it's driven by different things. On one hand, you could say your SaaS applications is a cloud solution, then you have infrastructure as a service as a cloud providers, so you're multi-cloud. But I think when you think of it just as primarily, like GCP, AWS, Azure, what you're seeing is best fit. You may have a certain team or a certain business line that has skills that are related to a certain cloud or an application that takes advantage of a feature on a certain cloud that makes sense. In different applications that make sense on different clouds. There's overhead in that. You need now a diverse set of skills, or maybe more than one partner, or maybe you have a partner that can help with more, but you have sprawled out kind of the skill requirements to manage those. And so you have to really evaluate. I think having application mobility between lots of different clouds, that can be done. I've helped customers do that. But you need a really strong business case because it's not easy and it's often not cheap. But I do think that there are some very good use cases for having certain applications on one or the other that's application specific. But underneath it all, if you're a company full of AWS experts and you go drop your application on Google or Azure, you're going to have a hard time. So I think you do have to make always with your cloud decisions, do a thorough assessment of your capabilities and understand your gaps there first. It doesn't mean that you might not need to go retool your organization. But you really need to understand that before you go jump into those decisions.
Speaking of that, it seems to me at least that every time you drop a workload on a different platform, you increase the total cost of IT. You got to go get additional tools. You got to get additional specialists. And do you think people are having a real understanding of the total cost of IT every time they add a new cloud platform? Or maybe, who knows, one day might we get to this one magic tool that can manage them all? Is that ever going to happen?
Every time we've seen a tool out there that presents that promise, it seems to get scooped up and disappears pretty quick. But, you bring up a really good point, and that's the thing that you have to evaluate. If you believe that there's a strong case for having applications running on different clouds, you need to understand your cost of ownership. It's one thing that a lot of when people they go and do their TCOs and things like that, running apps in the clouds, is they don't spend enough time thinking about that. Having led a lot of multi-cloud teams, I can tell you there are some unicorns out there, people that are highly effective on multiple clouds, but it's hard. There's not a lot of people like that out there, and it's hard to scale that kind of expertise. So I do believe that typically when you're running an application on more than one cloud, you're going to have some increased operational overhead with that. Will there be more tools that make that easier? Yes, and there are some out there, but often what you start to run into when you're leveraging a middleware tool that's helping solve some of those challenges for you, you are sometimes pulling away some of the value that the clouds differentiate on. You now have gone to some common denominator set of capabilities, or if a cloud launches a brand new feature, it may not be available in that tool yet for a while. So there's trade-offs, and again, you just really have to look at what you're solving for as a business.
We also see people migrate workloads that might have been on one VM, and then they move them to the cloud, and then they're rehosted, refactored on another VM, and then they don't run as well, especially if they're being accessed over a wide area network because the laws of physics have not been suspended. And then we decide that we're going to rewrite all this stuff in quote unquote cloud native technologies, and we get Kubernetes containers and serverless frameworks, so lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Do we have the skills to cope with all of that and manage that? Or is that kind of slowing down our migration and also overall just increasing our costs?
Where we started, we were talking a little bit about kind of the different phases of migrations, different life cycles. I think this kind of squarely falls back on it, right? I think in general, and everybody's in a different place in their own journey, we've gotten pretty good in an industry of taking something, getting it to work in the cloud resilient, breaking out some services layers and optimizing it for the cloud. Maybe some performance trade-offs here or there. In some cases, it could improve a lot of it performance. In other cases, you might find some nuances where it hurts it. And you have to kind of tackle those cases and figure out what's the best, dig into it, figure out if it was on the wrong type of instance type. Again, we get back into like right sizing resources for cost. But where the real value typically comes in is if you actually go through, and we're not just talking about refactoring and breaking out services to put it in the cloud across more servers, things like that, resilience. It may be, should there be a serverless solution? Should there be, container? I mean, we have a lot of the same motions happening in containers that were happening with the early days of cloud. People are putting stuff in containers because they're reading all these articles about how great containers are. Is it for their use case? Maybe not always. But the hard thing right now is there's not a good tool out there, or not a good effort. It takes a lot of expertise to say, if I invest all this time and money to go actually rebuild this application, rewrite this application in a really cloud native way, am I going to get the return on that investment? Because it does take a lot of time to go do that. But you may not really be able to realize the full performance and cost efficiency is capable until you go through an exercise like that. And that's kind of that next phase, or that more modern cloud native, if you will, aspect of cloud adoption, is not just being able to take something and make it resilient in the cloud and resource utilize well, perform it. It's being able to really break it out into a service layer, adopting things like serverless technologies and so forth. It's not going to be right for every use case, but being able to understand those use cases and being able to actually try and figure out, is it worth the effort? And that's really kind of where the golden egg is, I think, in a lot of cases, and working with really skilled cloud experts that can take you there, not because that there's tools that are going to go magically produce that answer for you, more or less because they've been there, they've seen similar cases, and can share their experiences.
One way or another, the ROI on that effort is going to be somewhat extended because it takes time to build those applications. So you may eventually see it, but it's not going to happen overnight. So the question is, do customers a decade on have realistic expectations about what the cloud's really all about? Or is this something they kind of discover after they get there and they go, hey, how come nobody told me?
I think we're getting around to it more, and I guess the first cloud architecture team I was leading was over a decade ago, and we were spending a lot of time telling people what the cloud is and how it works and things like that. Right now, I would say generally the biggest difference in the industry is especially like in startups, you have a lot more cloud native startups. Most of the CTOs or CIOs have some battle scars of dealing with the cloud, and they have some perception of the strategy that they need. So I think there's a better understanding of the promise of the cloud and where the pitfalls lie. But that doesn't mean that they're easy to navigate. It's still about having really strong partners that can help you through that. One of the more common strategies that we're seeing is back to that point we were just making. The ROI could be pushed way out. It may not be that it makes sense to go invest all that time on the current application, but you may not be spending a lot of time anymore on developing and further building out that application as much as you're thinking about the full next revision or the next product that may someday sunset the previous product, and how you start off building that one the right way, cloud native. That's a huge leg up for cloud native startups to think that way right off the bat. And something that companies that are around and established and have products that have been in the market for a while have to consider the risk of, not just the time and the ROI to potentially push out that way, but if you don't, what's the threat that someone else might, and what's the risk to disrupting your product if they do, or your business model?
Speaking of risk, do we actually consider the cost of securing all this stuff in the cloud, or we kind of like think of that as an afterthought and then nobody does the math?
You have to. You've seen so many different iterations and marketing tricks that different companies have around like where security fits in the lifestyle, but the reality is it has to fit in every step. If you're not thinking about it up front, if you're trying to bolt it on later, it's typically more challenging and more expensive. I think generally the market's coming around to the fact that like the cloud can be highly secure. It could be more secure than traditional data centers and controls if it's done properly. Most times that we've seen in the industry, any kind of breach, it's very rarely, it's not that it came through the cloud provider. It was usually a poorly secured application or compromised credentials of a resource or something like that. So it's really just making sure that you understand the security best practices.
As we kind of put all this together, do you think that there's going to be a backlash against the cloud? You talked about some folks are repatriating applications, or are they getting better at slicing them up and maybe moving them to different platforms depending on what the data gravity of that application looks like? Or are we just getting smarter?
I think we saw a lot of backlash. We may not have seen the end of it all. Some of the economic pressures and things like that are making people reevaluate their cloud strategies. But I actually think in a lot of cases, those pressures may be accelerating the focus on making sure you have your environment optimized or refactored or architected appropriately more than set us back. So I think that they will continue to move forward and continue to get smarter, which may in some cases include situations where people realize that they did something because they thought they should do it and it wasn't the right decision. So there may be some cases where people pull back, but I think that's part of the learning and the experience is understanding the right use cases, the right application architectures to the cloud.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Agility, resiliency, all very important, but in the age of the cloud, they're far from priceless. Hey, Jarrett, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
Do you know what you want?
Can we afford this place?
I'm thinking 1,000-piece Kubernetes, cloud workload protection, and XDR combo.
Yeah, I actually don't see any prices.
Hello, how can I schedule a demo for you today?
So we're on a budget.
Okay.
How much is your 1,000-piece Kubernetes?
What solutions are you currently evaluating?
You don't have to order off that thing.
We don't?
How did you get in here? Check this out.
Optic's secret dollar menu.
Order today and you can secure any combo of cloud and endpoint assets through the end of next year, all for $1.
What if I want to secure 100 Mac laptops and 900 Linux servers?
Yeah, $1. What if I want 500 laptops and 500 Kubernetes nodes? Just $1?
Yep, mix and match to create the combo that works for you.
What about customer support?
Yep, everything for just $1.
We're gonna order off the Optic's secret dollar menu. And seriously, how did you get in here?
Seriously.
Try the Uptix combo of CNAP and XDR delivered in a single UI and data model. Just $1 to secure your cloud, containers, and laptops through the end of next year. Offer ends December 31st.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had an amazing set of interviews with industry professionals to give you the inside scoop into the tech world. And alongside our extensive conference coverage and our episode of Engineering the Change, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again tomorrow, so we hope to see you then. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.